Welcome, fierce souls, to a world where power runs as deep as ancient bloodlines and desire burns hotter than wildfire. Tonight, you'll meet Dominic Kane, an alpha who has ruled his world with an iron fist and unwavering command for over a decade. Every wolf in his territory bows to his authority. Every business rival trembles at his name. Every woman who's ever tried to tame him has failed. But fate has a wicked sense of humor. Because tonight, everything changes when she walks into his domain, a woman who doesn't know the meaning of submission, whose fire matches his own, and whose very presence threatens to either complete him or destroy everything he's built. This is the story of an alpha who thought he needed no one, and the woman strong enough to prove him wrong. Buckle up, listeners. Dominic Kane is about to meet his match. Chapter 1. The mahogany conference table stretched 12 feet across the penthouse boardroom, its surface reflecting the Seattle skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. At its head sat Dominic Kane, and even in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, there was no mistaking what he was beneath the civilized veneer: apex predator, pack alpha, and the most powerful werewolf on the West Coast. His steel-gray eyes swept across the faces of his inner circle, each of the 6 men and women representing different aspects of his vast empire. Kane Industries owned half the commercial real estate in the Pacific Northwest, but that was just the human face of his true domain. What mattered was the supernatural territory he commanded: 300 miles of prime forest, hunting grounds, and den sites that housed the largest wolf pack in North America. "The Blackwood Pack is testing our southern border again," reported Marcus Webb, his beta and head of security. Marcus was built like a linebacker, with dark hair and the kind of scars that told stories, but when he looked at Dominic, his posture screamed deference. They all did that. Even his inner circle, wolves powerful enough to lead packs of their own, instinctively lowered their eyes when addressing their alpha. "How many incursions this month?" Dominic's voice was a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the room. He didn't need to raise it. When an alpha spoke, everyone listened. 7 confirmed. "They're not hunting, just marking territory." Dominic's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. To anyone else, he would have appeared perfectly calm, but his wolves could sense the dangerous shift in his energy. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 5 degrees. "They're testing me." He leaned back in his leather chair, fingers steepled. "Victor Blackwood thinks my focus on human business ventures has made me soft." A ripple of unease went through the group. The idea of anyone considering Dominic Kane soft was laughable and terrifying in equal measure. He'd earned his position as alpha not through birthright, but by challenging and defeating the previous leader in combat when he was barely 25. In the 15 years since, he'd expanded their territory, eliminated 2 rival packs, and built a business empire that made him one of the wealthiest men in the state. "What are your orders, Alpha?" asked Sera, his lead lawyer and the only one brave enough to meet his eyes directly. Even then, she only held his gaze for a few seconds at a time. "Double the patrols along the southern border. Make sure Victor's scouts get a good look at what they're dealing with." Dominic's smile was all predator. "And schedule a meeting with him for next week. It's time we had a conversation about boundaries." The euphemism wasn't lost on anyone. When alphas had conversations about boundaries, they usually ended with one of them submitting or bleeding. Often both. Dominic was about to continue when his assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Mr. Kane? I'm sorry to interrupt, but Dr. Reeves is here for the consultation. She says she has an appointment." Every eye in the room turned to Marcus, who was responsible for Dominic's schedule. The beta's face went carefully blank. "I don't have any Dr. Reeves on the calendar." "Did you run a background check?" Dominic asked, his tone deceptively mild. "Sir, there's no appointment scheduled."
"Did you run
a background check?" Each word was precisely enunciated, and Marcus visibly flinched. "I'll do it right now." Marcus pulled out his phone, fingers flying over the screen. After 30 seconds, his expression shifted from confusion to concern. "Alpha, there's no Dr. Reeves in any of our databases. No appointment scheduled. But security shows she made it past the front desk and the 20th floor. That shouldn't be possible without clearance." The room went dead silent. Kane Industries occupied floors 15 through 25 of the Rainier Tower, with Dominic's private elevator requiring biometric scanning and pack member authorization. The idea that someone could simply walk through their security was unthinkable. Unless she wasn't entirely human. Dominic rose from his chair, his movement fluid despite his 6'4" frame. Every wolf in the room immediately came to attention, awaiting orders. "Stand down," he said quietly. "If she wanted us dead, we'd already be dead. I'll handle this personally." "Alpha, let me," Marcus started. "Stand
Down.
The command hit Marcus like a physical force, and the beta immediately dropped his eyes and stepped back. Dominic straightened his tie and walked toward the door, every instinct screaming that something was about to change. In over 30 years of life, he'd learned to trust those instincts completely. The elevator chimed softly as he pressed the call button, and when the doors opened, his breath caught in his throat. She stood in the center of the elevator, and the first thing he noticed wasn't her striking auburn hair or the way her simple black dress hugged curves that could make a saint sin. It was her eyes, storm green and utterly fearless as they met his directly. No hesitation. No instinctive submission. No recognition of his authority whatsoever. In 34 years, no woman had ever looked at him like that. Like he was just another man instead of an alpha wolf. "Mr. Kane, I presume?" Her voice was honey over steel, with just a hint of amusement that made his jaw clench. "I'm Dr. Sophia Reeves. We need to talk." She stepped out of the elevator, and he caught her scent, wildflowers and rain and something else, something that made his wolf stir restlessly beneath his skin. Something that smelled like power. "My office," he said, his voice rougher than intended. He gestured toward the hallway, noting how she moved with predatory grace despite her heels clicking against the marble floor. As they walked past his conference room, he caught Marcus's eye through the glass and shook his head once. His beta would want to follow, to protect, but every instinct told Dominic this woman was dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with physical threat. His corner office was designed to intimidate. Massive desk, awards and photos documenting his business conquests, windows that showcased his domains stretching to the horizon. He'd closed million-dollar deals in this room, accepted the submission of rival alphas, and made grown men weep with a single glance. Dr. Sophia Reeves looked around with mild interest, then settled into one of the chairs across from his desk without invitation. She crossed her legs and studied him with those unnerving green eyes. "Impressive," she said, but her tone suggested she was talking about the view rather than being impressed by him personally. Dominic moved behind his desk but didn't sit, using his height and position to establish dominance. "You have 60 seconds to explain how you got past my security and why you're in my building without an appointment." Instead of cowering or rushing to explain, she smiled. It was a slow, dangerous curve of lips that made something low in his belly tighten with unexpected heat. "Or what, Mr. Kane? You'll have me escorted out." Her head tilted slightly, auburn hair catching the afternoon light. "We both know your security couldn't escort me anywhere I didn't want to go." The casual confidence in her voice made his wolf pace restlessly. She wasn't just unafraid, she was completely certain she could handle anything he threw at her. The realization was both infuriating and arousing in a way that caught him completely off guard. "What are you?" The question slipped out before he could stop it, raw and honest, in a way that revealed more than he'd intended. "Right now? I'm the answer to a problem you don't even know you have yet." She leaned forward slightly, and he caught another whiff of that intoxicating scent. "But to answer your real question, I'm a werewolf behavioral specialist. I have a PhD in supernatural psychology and 15 years of experience dealing with alpha wolves who think they're God's gift to creation." The insult hit its mark, but it was the first part of her statement that made him go very still. Werewolf behavioral specialist meant she worked with problem wolves. Alphas who'd lost control. Packs that were failing or falling apart. "I don't need a specialist," he said, his voice deadly quiet. "No." She pulled a manila folder from her purse and set it on his desk. "Then explain why 3 of your pack members have requested transfers to other territories in the past month. Why your birth rate has dropped 40% in the past 2 years. Why your younger wolves are questioning your leadership for the first time since you took power. Dominic's hands clenched into fists. Everything she'd said was true, but those were pack secrets. Information that shouldn't exist outside his inner circle. How do you know about pack business that you thought was private? She opened the folder, revealing photographs and documents that made his blood run cold. Pictures of his wolves, detailed psychological profiles, even transcripts of conversations he'd thought were confidential. I've been studying your pack for 6 months, Mr. Kane. You're in trouble, whether you want to admit it or not. The folder hit the wall with a satisfying thud as he swept it off the desk in one violent motion. Papers scattered everywhere, but Dr. Reeves didn't even flinch. If anything, her smile widened. Temper, she said mildly. That's part of the problem. Get out. His voice was barely human now, touched with the growl of his wolf. Get out of my building, off my territory, and if I ever see you again, you'll what? She stood slowly, and for the first time, he caught a glimpse of something dangerous flickering behind her composed exterior. Threaten me? Challenge me? Use that alpha dominance that's been failing you so spectacularly lately? She took a step toward his desk, then another, and Dominic found himself fighting the urge to back away. There was something about her presence, her scent, the way she moved that set every nerve ending on fire. Here's the thing about behavioral specialists, Mr. Kane, she continued, now close enough that he could see golden flecks in her green eyes. We don't get called in when everything is working perfectly. We get called in when alphas are about to lose everything they've built. Who called you? The question was torn from his throat. Someone who cares more about this pack than you apparently do. She picked up her purse, seemingly unbothered by the papers scattered across his floor. Someone who's watched you drive away your most loyal wolves through sheer arrogance and refuses to watch this pack fall apart. She was at the door before he found his voice again. This isn't over. Dr. Sophia Reeves paused, one hand on the doorframe, and looked back at him over her shoulder. The smile she gave him was pure challenge. No, Mr. Kane. It's just beginning. The door closed behind her with a soft click, and Dominic stood frozen in his office, surrounded by scattered papers and the lingering scent of wildflowers and rain. His hands were shaking, actually shaking, with a combination of rage and something else he wasn't ready to name. In 34 years, no one had ever walked into his territory, challenged his authority, and walked away unscathed. No one had ever looked at him like he was just another man instead of an alpha wolf worthy of respect and fear. And no one had ever made him want to simultaneously throttle them and drag them to the nearest flat surface. Marcus appeared in the doorway, his face tight with concern. Alpha? Is everything all right? Dominic's laugh was sharp and humorless as he stared at the closed door. Find out everything you can about Dr. Sophia Reeves. I want to know where she lives, where she works, what she had for breakfast this morning. Everything. Yes, sir. Should I also increase security? If she was able to.
No.
Dominic moved to the window, hands clasped behind his back as he gazed out at his city. She'll be back. How can you be sure? For the first time since she'd walked into his building, Dominic smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Because she's not finished with me yet. And God help us both, I don't think I'm finished with her either. Chapter 2. Sophia Reeves sat in her rental car 3 blocks from the Rainier Tower, hands steady on the steering wheel despite the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. She'd faced down dozens of alpha males in her career, but none had affected her quite like Dominic Kane. Maybe it was the way he'd filled the entire room with his presence, making her hyper-aware of every breath she took. Maybe it was how his steel-gray eyes had turned molten when she'd challenged him, promising retribution and something far more dangerous. Or maybe it was the way her wolf had responded to his proximity, not with submission, but with recognition. Equal calling to equal. She pulled out her phone and dialed a familiar number. It's done, she said when the call connected. I made contact. How did he take it? The voice on the other end was carefully neutral, but Sophia could hear the underlying tension. About as well as expected. He threw my research across the room and threatened me. She smiled grimly. Standard alpha posturing when their authority is questioned. Sophia, maybe this was a mistake. If he's that volatile, He's not volatile, she interrupted, surprising herself with how quickly she defended him. He's scared. There's a difference. She started the engine, pulling into Seattle traffic. His pack is fragmenting and he knows it. He just doesn't know why or how to fix it. And you think you can help him? Sophia was quiet for a long moment, remembering the way Dominic had looked at her, like she was a puzzle he desperately wanted to solve, even as she threatened everything he thought he knew about himself. I think he's the most dominant alpha I've ever encountered, she said finally. And I think that's exactly his problem. He's so focused on maintaining control that he's forgotten how to inspire loyalty. The pack needs him to succeed, Sophia. If Kane Industries falls, if the pack fragments. I know. She turned onto the highway heading toward her temporary apartment. How long before the Blackwood pack makes their move? Victor's been probing the borders for months, but he won't act until he's sure Dominic is weak enough to defeat. Maybe 3 weeks, maybe less. 3 weeks to fix 15 years of increasingly rigid leadership. 3 weeks to teach an alpha who'd never bowed to anyone that sometimes strength meant knowing when to bend. 3 weeks to ignore the way her pulse had jumped when he'd crowled at her, or how her wolf had wanted to step closer instead of backing down. I can do it, she said, more to convince herself than her contact. I hope so. For all our sakes. The line went dead, and Sophia drove in silence, her mind already working through strategies and approaches. She'd handled aggressive alphas before, but never one who'd made her feel like she was walking into a cage with a hungry predator. Never one who'd looked at her like he wanted to devour her whole. Her phone buzzed with an incoming text from an unknown number, Dr. Reeves. Tomorrow, 7 a.m. My private gym, sub-basement level. Don't be late. DK. Sophia stared at the message, a slow smile spreading across her face. Most alphas would have spent days gathering intelligence before making another move. Dominic Kane was already planning his counterattack. She texted back, "See you there, Alpha." The response came immediately. "It's Mr. Kane to you." Her fingers flew over the keyboard. "We'll see about that." The next morning, Kane Industries sub-basement. Sophia arrived at 6:55 a.m., dressed in black leggings and a fitted athletic top that allowed for full range of movement. She'd learned long ago that dealing with alphas often meant being ready for anything, including the possibility that verbal sparring might turn physical. The sub-basement was accessed by a private elevator that required a key card. Dominic had left one for her at the front desk with a security guard who'd looked at her like she was walking to her execution. The elevator descended 2 floors below street level before opening into what could only be described as a werewolf stream gym. The space was enormous, with high ceilings and industrial lighting. One wall was lined with traditional weight equipment, another with martial arts mats. But it was the third wall that caught her attention, reinforced steel panels that looked like they could withstand a direct assault. For when human forms weren't enough. Punctual, came a voice from behind her. "I appreciate that in a consultant." Sophia turned, and her breath caught in her throat. If Dominic Kane had been imposing in a business suit, he was devastating in workout gear. Black athletic shorts and a gray tank top that showcased arms corded with muscle and a chest that spoke of serious time spent in combat training. There were scars along his forearms, old ones, the kind that came from claws rather than knives. "Mr. Kane." She kept her voice level, professional. "Interesting venue for a business meeting." "This isn't a business meeting, Doctor." He moved closer and she caught his scent again, cedar and smoke and pure male dominance. "This is an education." "Really? And what exactly are you planning to teach me?" His smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "Respect." He gestured toward the mats, and Sophia felt a familiar thrill run down her spine. She'd been in this situation before. Alpha males who thought they could intimidate her through physical demonstration. They were usually in for quite a surprise. "Combat training?" she asked, following him to the center of the mats. "Sparring," he corrected. "I want to understand what I'm dealing with. You waltzed past my security, invaded my territory, and challenged my authority. Now I get to find out how." Sophia kicked off her sneakers and faced him across the mat. "And if I refuse?" Then you leave my building and never come back." His voice dropped to that dangerous growl that had made her pulse jump yesterday. "But somehow, I don't think you're the type to back down from a challenge." He was right, and they both knew it. She'd built her career on walking into impossible situations and refusing to be intimidated. She wasn't about to start backing down now. "Rules?" she asked, settling into a fighting stance that would have looked familiar to anyone trained in Krav Maga. "No claws, no teeth, no shifting." He mirrored her stance, and she could see why he'd survived as an alpha for 15 years. Every line of his body spoke of controlled violence. First one to yield or hit the mat loses. "And what does the winner get?" His eyes went molten. "Whatever they want." The words hung in the air between them, loaded with implications that made her skin prickle with awareness. This wasn't just about dominance anymore. This was about attraction, about the electric tension that had been building since the moment she'd stepped off that elevator. "Deal," she said. He moved first, faster than most humans could track, but Sophia had been sparring with supernatural predators since she was 16. She sidestepped his initial attack, using his momentum against him to spin behind him and aim a kick at his kidney. He twisted away at the last second, her foot grazing his ribs instead of landing solidly. His counterattack came immediately, a grab for her wrist that would have immobilized most opponents. Sophia broke the hold with a sharp twist and drove her elbow toward his solar plexus. He blocked it, but the movement left him open for the knee she drove toward his midsection. He caught her leg, using his grip to unbalance her, but instead of fighting it, she used the momentum to swing her other leg up in a kick that would have connected with his temple if he hadn't released her and stepped back. They separated, circling each other on the mat, and Sophia could see the surprise in his eyes. He'd expected to overwhelm her with superior strength and speed. Instead, he was dealing with someone who'd been trained to fight opponents bigger and stronger than herself. "Impressive," he said, and she could hear genuine respect in his voice. "Military training?" "Something like that." She feinted left, then came in low and fast, aiming for a takedown that would put him on the mat. But Dominic Kane hadn't become pack alpha by being easy to take down. He sprawled back, avoiding her tackle, then used his weight advantage to drive her sideways. They went down together, rolling across the mat in a tangle of limbs as each tried to gain the dominant position. Sophia ended up on her back with Dominic pinning her wrists above her head, his body pressed against hers from chest to hip. They were both breathing hard, faces inches apart, and the scent of their combined arousal was unmistakable. "Yield," he commanded, his voice rough with more than just exertion. Instead of answering, Sophia brought her knee up sharply. He twisted to avoid it, loosening his grip just enough for her to break free and reverse their positions. Suddenly she was straddling his waist, her hands braced against his chest as she looked down at him. "I don't yield to anyone," she said breathlessly. "Ever." Something shifted in his expression, surprise giving way to something that looked almost like admiration. His hands came up to rest on her hips, not to move her, but to hold her in place. "What are you?" he asked again, but this time the question was wondering rather than threatening. "I'm the woman who's going to save your pack," she said. "If you're smart enough to let me." They stayed frozen like that for several heartbeats, her hands on his chest, his hands on her hips, both of them hyper-aware of every point of contact. The air between them crackled with tension that had nothing to do with combat and everything to do with the way her wolf was responding to his proximity. Then footsteps echoed in the stairwell, and they sprang apart like they'd been burned. Marcus Webb appeared at the bottom of the stairs, took one look at their flushed faces and disheveled appearance, and stopped dead. "Alpha? I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were training." "What is it, Marcus?" Dominic's voice was steady, but Sophia could see the muscle ticking in his jaw. "We have a problem. 3 more pack members submitted transfer requests this morning, including James Morrison." Sophia saw Dominic go very still. Even she knew that name. James Morrison was his third in command, one of his most trusted advisors. If he was asking for a transfer, "Get out," Dominic said quietly. "Alpha, get out." The roar echoed off the concrete walls, and Marcus fled up the stairs without another word. Sophia watched as Dominic walked to the reinforced wall and slammed his fist against it. The steel panel didn't dent, but she heard his knuckles crack with the impact. "James has been with me for 12 years," he said without turning around. "He's never questioned a single order, never hesitated to follow where I led. And now he's asking to leave," Sophia said softly. "Because he doesn't trust you to lead him anymore." Dominic whirled around, and for a moment she thought he might actually shift right there in the gym. His eyes were already starting to glow with inner fire, his canines extending slightly. "I have led this pack through territory wars, rival challenges, and human encroachment that would have destroyed weaker alphas," he snarled. "I've expanded our hunting grounds, protected our secrets, and built an empire that ensures our children will never want for anything. How dare you? How dare any of them question my leadership?" "Because leadership isn't just about protecting and providing," Sophia said, taking a step toward him despite every instinct screaming at her to maintain distance from an alpha on the edge of losing control. "It's about connection. It's about making your pack feel like they matter, like their voices are heard, like they're part of something bigger than just your will. I am the alpha." His voice shook the walls. "My will is the pack's will." "No," she said firmly. "Your will is just your will. And your pack is slowly realizing that following someone who sees them as extensions of himself instead of individuals isn't the same as being led by someone who actually cares about their well-being." The words hit him like physical blows, and she saw the exact moment when his rage cracked to reveal the fear underneath. His shoulders sagged slightly, and when he looked at her again, she saw uncertainty in those gray eyes. "Then tell me," he said quietly. "Tell me how to fix it." It was the first time since she'd met him that he'd asked instead of demanded. The first time he'd admitted he might not have all the answers. "It starts with trust," she said. "And trust starts with vulnerability. You have to let them see that you're not infallible, that you need them as much as they need you. Vulnerability is weakness. Weakness gets alphas killed. Vulnerability is strength, Dominic." She used his first name deliberately and saw his eyes flicker with surprise. "It takes more courage to admit you don't have all the answers than it does to pretend you're invincible." He stared at her for a long moment, and she could practically see him wrestling with everything he'd been taught about what it meant to be alpha. 3 weeks, he said finally. "What?" "I'll give you 3 weeks to prove that your way works. 3 weeks to show me how vulnerability makes me stronger instead of weaker." His expression hardened. "But if my pack fragments, if we show weakness that our enemies can exploit, if your methods put my wolves in danger, then you'll throw me out and go back to ruling through fear and intimidation? Then I'll remind you exactly why I've held this position for 15 years, he said, and the threat in his voice was very real. Sophia felt a shiver that was part fear, part anticipation. She was playing with fire, literally and figuratively, and they both knew it. But as she looked into his eyes and saw the desperate hope he was trying to hide, she knew she couldn't walk away. 3 weeks, she agreed. But we do this my way. No more alpha commands, no more intimidation tactics. You want to save your pack? You're going to have to learn to trust me. And you're going to have to learn to trust me not to tear your throat out when you push me too far. His smile was sharp and dangerous, but there was something else there now. Something that looked almost like anticipation. Deal, Dr. Reeves. Deal, Alpha. This time, when she used his title, it sounded almost like endearment. Chapter 3. The downtown Seattle coffee shop was neutral territory, or as neutral as anywhere could be when 2 apex predators were circling each other like wolves testing boundaries. Dante had chosen Pike Place Market's oldest cafe deliberately, a public space where neither of them could resort to the kind of primal displays of dominance that had been simmering between them since their first meeting 3 days ago. He was already seated when Luna arrived, occupying a corner table that gave him clear sight lines to all entrances and exits. Old habits from years of pack leadership died hard, and something about Dr. Luna Morrison made every protective instinct he possessed fire at once. She moved through the crowded cafe like she owned it, ignoring the appreciative glances from human males and the instinctive wariness from the handful of supernatural creatures who caught her scent. Her dark jeans and cream cashmere sweater should have looked casual, approachable. Instead, they emphasized every curve while somehow making her seem even more untouchable. "You're early," she said, sliding into the chair across from him without ceremony. "Punctuality is a sign of respect," Dante replied, studying her face for any tell that might give him an advantage in whatever game they were playing. "Something I value highly." Luna's lips curved in that maddening smile he was beginning to recognize as her signature weapon. "And here I thought alphas just like to establish dominance by claiming the best territory first." She wasn't wrong, but he'd be damned if he'd admit it. "You said you had proof about the Riverside property. I'm here to listen." "Just listen?" Her head tilted slightly, sending waves of that intoxicating pine and honey scent in his direction. "Not to intimidate me into backing down? Not to remind me of your reputation or your pack's impressive track record of hostile takeovers?" Dante's jaw tightened. She'd done her homework. That much was clear. Most wolves would have approached him with deference, even if they were planning to challenge his claim. Luna Morrison acted like she was doing him a favor by sharing the same air. "I don't need to remind you of anything," he said carefully. "My reputation speaks for itself." "Oh, it does." She leaned back in her chair, perfectly relaxed despite being close enough to one of the most dangerous predators on the West Coast that he could hear her heartbeat. Steady, unafraid. Dante Blackwood took over the pack at 22 when his father was killed in a territorial dispute. Built Blackwood Industries from a mid-sized construction company into a billion-dollar empire. Hasn't lost a single challenge to his authority in 12 years. The recitation of his achievements should have been flattering. Instead, something in her tone made them sound almost clinical, like she was reading from a case study rather than acknowledging the power he'd bled to earn. "You seem to have done your research," he said evenly. "I always research my opponents thoroughly." Luna reached into her purse and withdrew a thick manila folder, setting it on the table between them like a gauntlet. "Which is how I know that your claim on Riverside is based on a treaty your father signed with Alpha Morrison 28 years ago." Dante's eyes never left her face, but he could see the folder in his peripheral vision. Official-looking documents. Legal stamps. The kind of paperwork that could either be completely legitimate or expertly forged. "The treaty is valid," he said. "The treaty is void." Her voice carried absolute certainty, because it was signed under fraudulent pretenses by an alpha who didn't have the right to negotiate in the first place. Now she had his full attention. Dante leaned forward slightly, his massive frame making the small cafe table seem even more inadequate. The movement brought him close enough to see the gold flecks in her forest green eyes, close enough to catch the subtle way her pulse quickened despite her outward composure. "Explain." Luna opened the folder with practiced efficiency, revealing documents that looked far older than anything in his own legal files. The Riverside territory wasn't originally Crimson Pack land. It belonged to the Lunar Ridge Pack, a smaller group that was absorbed by Morrison's grandfather in 1952 after their alpha died without an heir. "Ancient history," Dante said, but something in his gut was beginning to twist with unease. "Not so ancient." She slid a birth certificate across the table, followed by what looked like official pack genealogy records. Alpha Thomas Luna of Lunar Ridge had a daughter. She was sent away before the pack dissolution, pregnant, unwed, a scandal the old guard preferred to forget. That daughter gave birth to a son in Portland. He took his mother's maiden name and never shifted, never knew his true heritage. Dante stared at the documents, his enhanced vision taking in every detail of the official seals, the witness signatures, the dates that aligned perfectly with the story she was telling. His wolf was pacing restlessly, sensing something important that his human mind hadn't quite grasped yet. "What does this have to do with you?" he asked, though part of him was beginning to suspect. Luna's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "The daughter's name was Elena Luna Morrison. She was my grandmother, which makes me the last surviving heir to the Lunar Ridge Pack and the rightful owner of every acre of Riverside territory." The cafe seemed to fade around them, the chatter of other customers becoming white noise as Dante processed the implications. If she was telling the truth, and the documentation looked disturbingly authentic, then everything he thought he knew about the territorial dispute was wrong. His father's treaty with Morrison wasn't just invalid, it was meaningless. "These could be forgeries," he said finally. They could be. Luna leaned back, completely unruffled by the accusation. But they're not. I've got DNA evidence, witness testimony from elderly pack members who remember Elena, and official birth records from 3 states. I've also got a law degree from Stanford and 12 years of experience in supernatural property law. She paused, letting that sink in before delivering the killing blow. Oh, and I've already filed a formal claim with the Pacific Northwest Supernatural Council. You should be receiving their request for mediation by end of business today. Dante's hands clenched into fists on the table. The Pacific Northwest Supernatural Council was the closest thing their world had to a Supreme Court, neutral arbitrators who settled disputes between packs when negotiation failed. Their decisions were binding, backed by the combined authority of every major pack from Alaska to Northern California. You planned this, he said, his voice low and dangerous. The timing, the territorial dispute, even this meeting. You orchestrated all of it. I plan to reclaim my birthright, Luna corrected. Your pack's attempt to muscle Morrison out of Riverside just gave me the perfect opportunity to step forward. Dante's wolf was snarling now, frustrated by an enemy it couldn't simply overwhelm with physical dominance. Luna Morrison wasn't just challenging his authority, she was threatening to embarrass him in front of the entire supernatural community. If the council ruled in her favor, his reputation as an unbeatable negotiator would be shattered. What do you want? He asked bluntly. I want what's mine. Her voice never wavered, never showed a hint of doubt or weakness. 1,700 acres of pristine forest, including the ancestral grounds where my great-grandfather's pack ran for over a century. And if I refuse to acknowledge your claim? Luna's laugh was like silk over steel. Then you'll find out firsthand why the Lunar Ridge pack was never conquered in battle. They were absorbed through politics and betrayal, not defeated through strength. She stood gracefully, gathering her documents with the same calm efficiency she displayed throughout their entire confrontation. The council hearing is scheduled for next Friday. I suggest you bring your best lawyers, Mr. Blackwood. You're going to need them. Dante remained seated, watching her prepare to leave with the kind of focused intensity he usually reserved for potential threats to his pack. Every instinct screamed that he should stop her, should demand more information, should find some way to regain control of a situation that was spiraling rapidly beyond his influence. Instead, he found himself asking, why didn't you approach me directly when you first discovered the truth? Why the elaborate game? Luna paused, her hand on the back of her chair, and for the first time since he'd met her, something that might have been vulnerability flickered across her features. Because I've spent my entire adult life watching powerful men take what they want without consequence, she said quietly. I learned a long time ago that the only way to deal with an alpha is to be prepared for war. She turned to go, then stopped and looked back over her shoulder. The expression on her face was unreadable, but her scent carried notes of something complex, regret, maybe, or disappointment. For what it's worth, Mr. Blackwood, I hope I was wrong about you. But your reputation suggests otherwise. Then she was gone, weaving through the crowd with the same fluid confidence that had marked her arrival. Dante sat alone at the small table, surrounded by the scents of coffee and pastries and humans, staring at the space where she'd been. His phone buzzed with an incoming message. Marcus, probably wanting an update on the meeting. His pack would be expecting him to return with either Luna Morrison's unconditional surrender or plans for the kind of overwhelming show of force that had solved his problems in the past. But for the first time in his adult life, Dante Blackwood wasn't sure that raw power would be enough. Luna Morrison wasn't just challenging his claim to territory. She was challenging everything he'd built his identity around, his authority, his methods, his absolute certainty that strength always prevailed over cleverness. And God help him, he was looking forward to finding out which one of them was right. Chapter 4. The morning sun cast long shadows through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Damon's penthouse office as he reviewed security reports from the night's patrol. 3 cups of coffee sat cold on his desk, untouched. His wolf had been too restless to focus on anything but the lingering scent of jasmine and defiance that still clung to his clothes from yesterday's encounter with Sera. A sharp knock interrupted his brooding. Enter. Marcus stepped through the doorway, his expression grim. "We have a problem, Alpha." Damon's head snapped up, every instinct suddenly alert. "What kind of problem?" "It's about the woman from yesterday. Sera Nightingale." Marcus moved closer, lowering his voice despite the soundproofed office. "She's not just some random human who stumbled into our territory." The coffee mug in Damon's hand cracked. He set it down carefully, his jaw tightening. "Explain." "I ran her background after she left. Sera Nightingale doesn't exist, not officially. No birth certificate, no social security number, no employment history beyond the last 3 months. But I dug deeper." Marcus slid a tablet across the desk. "Her real name is Serafina Roseheart." The name hit Damon like a physical blow. His wolf surged forward, every protective instinct roaring to life. Roseheart, as in the Roseheart pack. The one and only. The pack that was supposedly wiped out 12 years ago. Marcus's voice was barely above a whisper. "Alpha, if she's who I think she is. She's the last surviving member of the most powerful bloodline in North America." Damon's hands clenched into fists. The Roseheart pack had been legendary. Their alpha line produced some of the strongest wolves in history, and their territory had once spanned 3 states. Until the night they disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only burned buildings and questions that were never answered. "There's more," Marcus continued reluctantly. "I intercepted communications this morning. Victor Ashford has put a bounty on her head. 5 million, dead or alive." The sound that erupted from Damon's throat was pure alpha fury, a growl so deep and primal that the windows vibrated. His wolf clawed at his control, demanding to shift, to hunt, to protect what was his. Because despite knowing her for less than 24 hours, every fiber of his being recognized the truth that his rational mind tried to deny. Sera was his mate. "How many hunters?" His voice had dropped to a lethal whisper. "At least 6 that we've identified. Professional mercenaries. All of them. They arrived in the city this morning." Marcus hesitated. "Alpha, with respect, maybe we should let her handle this herself. Getting involved in Ashford politics."
No.
The word cracked through the air like a whip. Damon rose from his chair, his massive frame radiating barely contained power. "She's under my protection now. But she's not pack. She's not even claimed. She's mine." The declaration rang with absolute finality. "And anyone who touches what's mine will answer to me personally." Marcus bowed his head in submission. "What are your orders, Alpha?" Damon was already reaching for his jacket, his mind calculating logistics and strategies. "Double the perimeter patrols. I want eyes on every entrance to the city. And send a team to watch her apartment, discreetly. She can't know we're there. And if she runs? She won't." Damon's smile was sharp as a blade. "Not yet. She's too stubborn to back down from a challenge, and too smart not to realize she needs allies." The phone on his desk buzzed with an incoming call. Damon glanced at the screen, and his blood turned to ice. Sera's name flashed across the display, but the number wasn't her cell phone. It was coming from the emergency line at St. Mary's Hospital. He snatched up the phone. "Sera? Mr. Blackthorne?" The voice was unfamiliar, female, professional, scared. "My name is Dr. Sera Chen. I'm calling because you were listed as an emergency contact for Serafina Nightingale. She's been admitted with severe injuries." The world tilted. Damon's wolf roared in fury and anguish, the sound echoing through the office. Marcus jumped to his feet, hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. "What happened?" Damon's voice was deadly calm now, the kind of stillness that preceded a hurricane. "She was attacked in the parking garage of her apartment building. Multiple stab wounds, significant blood loss. She's stable now, but..." The doctor's voice faltered. "Sir, someone really wanted to hurt her. This wasn't a random mugging." "I'm on my way." Damon was already moving toward the door. "Do not let anyone near her who isn't medical staff. No one. Is that understood?" Yes, sir." He ended the call and turned to Marcus, who was already grabbing his keys. "Call the pack. Full mobilization. I want every warrior we have ready for war within the hour." "Alpha," Marcus said carefully, Are you sure about this? Starting a conflict with Ashford over a woman you barely know. Damon's eyes flashed gold, his wolf very close to the surface. That woman is the future Luna of this pack. And if Victor Ashford thinks he can spill her blood in my territory without consequences, he's about to learn exactly how wrong he is. The elevator ride to the parking garage felt endless. Damon's hands shook with the effort of maintaining control, his wolf pacing frantically in his mind. The thought of Sera lying broken and bleeding while he'd been safe in his office, oblivious to her danger, was a special kind of torture. She'd been hurt on his territory, under his protection, whether she'd accepted it or not. It was a failure that cut deeper than any physical wound. The Lamborghini roared to life, its engine echoing his inner turmoil. As he peeled out of the garage, one thought consumed his mind. Someone had made the mistake of hurting his mate. And he was going to make them pay for it in blood. The streets blurred past as he raced toward the hospital, Marcus following in his own vehicle with a security team. Damon's phone buzzed with updates, his pack mobilizing, patrols reporting suspicious activity, the first pieces of his counterattack falling into place. But all of that faded to background noise beside the desperate need driving him forward. He had to reach Sera. Had to see for himself that she was alive, that she was going to be okay. Had to be there when she opened those defiant hazel eyes and realized that everything between them had changed. Because there was no going back now. The moment someone had drawn her blood, they declared war on his pack. And Damon Blackthorne had never lost a war. The hospital loomed ahead, its windows glowing in the early morning light. Somewhere inside, his mate was fighting for her life. And he was going to make damn sure she won. Chapter 5. The antiseptic smell of the hospital hit Damon like a physical wall as he burst through the emergency room doors. His wolf recoiled from the scent of sickness and death, but the human part of him pushed forward with single-minded determination. Behind him, Marcus and two pack warriors followed, their presence causing nervous glances from the medical staff. Serafina Nightingale, he commanded the receptionist, his voice carrying enough alpha authority to make her hands shake as she typed. Room 314, but visiting hours.
Now.
The word was barely human. Dr. Sera Chin intercepted them at the elevator, a petite woman with intelligent eyes and steel in her spine. Mr. Blackthorne? I'm the one who called. I need to prepare you for what you're going to see. Damon's jaw clenched. How bad? 7 stab wounds. 2 nearly punctured vital organs. She lost a lot of blood. The doctor's voice was clinical, but her eyes held compassion. Whoever did this knew exactly how to hurt her without killing her immediately. This was torture, not attempted murder. The elevator walls seemed to close in around him. Damon's hands clenched and unclenched, his wolf howling for vengeance. Is she awake? In and out. She's been asking for someone named Damon. Dr. Chin studied his face carefully. She said to tell you that the bastards didn't break her. And I quote, "So don't you dare look at her like she's made of glass." Despite everything, Damon's mouth twitched. Even beaten and broken, Sera was defiant. It was so perfectly her that it made his chest ache. The elevator dinged softly as they reached the 3rd floor. Dr. Chin led them down a sterile hallway lined with identical doors. 5 minutes, she said firmly. She needs rest. Room 314 was dimly lit, machines beeping steadily in the background. And there, surrounded by white sheets and medical equipment, was Sera. Damon's breath caught in his throat. She looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, her dark hair spread across the pillow like spilled ink. Bandages cover her arms and torso, and a nasty bruise painted half her face in shades of purple and blue. But her eyes, those fierce hazel eyes, were open and alert, fixed on him with an intensity that made his wolf whine. "About time you showed up," she said, her voice hoarse but steady. "I was starting to think you didn't care about your investments." Damon moved to her bedside with careful, measured steps. Every instinct screamed at him to gather her close, to shield her from any further harm. Instead, he pulled up a chair and sat down, bringing himself to her eye level. "Who did this to you?" His voice was deadly quiet. Sera's laugh was bitter. "Professional mercenaries. 3 of them, armed with silver-tipped blades and detailed knowledge of shifter anatomy. She met his gaze, without flinching. They knew exactly what I was, Damon. Which means someone told them. Victor Ashford. It wasn't a question. Her eyes widened fractionally, surprise, then something that might have been respect. You figured it out. I know who you really are, Serafina Roseheart. Last daughter of the legendary Alpha bloodline. Damon leaned forward, his voice dropping to an intimate whisper. The question is, why didn't you tell me? For the first time since he'd known her, Sera looked away. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible. Because every time someone learns the truth about my bloodline, they either try to kill me or use me. And I wasn't sure which category you'd fall into. The admission hit him like a physical blow. Damon reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently touched her uninjured hand. Her skin was warm beneath his fingers, and the contact sent electricity shooting up his arm. I would never hurt you, he said simply. And I sure as hell won't let anyone else hurt you either. Sera studied his face for a long moment, searching for deception. Whatever she saw there made her shoulders relax fractionally. They're not going to stop, you know. Ashford wants me dead because my bloodline threatens his claim to supremacy. As long as a Roseheart lives, there's always the possibility that someone will challenge his authority. Then we make sure they fail. Damon's thumb traced gentle circles on her knuckles. My pack has resources, territory, allies. You don't have to face this alone anymore. Why? The question was blunt, vulnerable in a way that made his chest tight. Why would you risk your pack for someone you barely know? Damon was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. He could tell her about the mate bond, about the way his wolf had claimed her from the moment she'd walked into his office. He could explain that protecting her wasn't a choice. It was as essential as breathing. Instead, he said, because you're worth protecting. And because I've spent 10 years as an alpha, and I've never met anyone who could stand toe-to-toe with me the way you do. The world needs more women like you in it, not fewer. Something shifted in Sera's expression. Walls coming down, defenses cracking. I'm not some helpless princess who needs rescuing, Blackthorne. I've been taking care of myself for 12 years. I know. His smile was soft, genuine. That's what makes you magnificent. The machines beeped steadily around them, marking time in the growing intimacy of the moment. Sera's free hand moved slowly, carefully, until her fingers covered his. The men who attacked me, she said quietly, they mentioned a timeline. Ashford wants this finished within the week. Damon's wolf snarled, but he kept his voice level. Then we have 6 days to make sure he regrets ever hearing your name.
We.
There was hope in her voice, carefully hidden but unmistakably there.
We.
He squeezed her hand gently. But first, you heal. And while you're doing that, I'm going to make some calls. It's time Victor Ashford learned what happens when he threatens a Blackthorne pack member. Sera's eyebrows rose. Pack member? I don't remember agreeing to join your pack. Damon's grin was pure predator. Give it time, sweetheart. You will. Dr. Chen appeared in the doorway, clipboard in hand and authority in her stance. Time's up, Mr. Blackthorne. Ms. Nightingale needs rest. As Damon stood to leave, Sera's grip on his hand tightened. Damon. Her voice was urgent, vulnerable. Don't do anything stupid while I'm stuck in here. I mean it. He leaned down, bringing his face close to hers. For a moment, the air between them crackled with unspoken possibilities. I'm not going anywhere, he promised. And neither are you. Not anymore. The kiss was soft, barely a brush of lips, but it sealed something between them that words couldn't express. When Damon pulled away, Sera's eyes were wide with surprise and something deeper, something that looked remarkably like trust. In the hallway, Marcus was waiting with barely contained urgency. Alpha, we've got problems. Ashford's people aren't the only ones sniffing around. 3 other packs have sent representatives to the city. Word is spreading about the Roseheart heir. Damon's expression hardened as he moved toward the elevator. The brief moment of tenderness was locked away, replaced by the cold calculation of an alpha at war. Let them come, he said quietly. It's time the supernatural community learned that Sera Roseheart is under Blackthorne protection. And anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me personally. The elevator doors closed with a soft ding, carrying him away from his injured mate and toward the battles that would determine their future. But as the floors ticked by, one thought echoed in his mind. For the first time in his life, he had something worth fighting for that went beyond duty or territory. He had Sera. And he'd burn the world down before he let anyone take her away. The war for Sera's life and Damon's heart was just beginning. Chapter 6. The war room in the Blackthorne compound hummed with tension as thick as smoke. Maps covered every surface, marked with red pins indicating Ashford's known associates and black pins showing potential allies. Damon stood at the head of the massive oak table, his presence commanding even in the face of mounting chaos. "Report," he commanded, his voice cutting through the murmur of conversations. Elena Vasquez, his head of intelligence, stepped forward with a tablet in hand. Her dark eyes were grim. "Ashford's mobilizing faster than we anticipated. He's called in favors from packs in 3 states, and there are rumors he's hiring human mercenaries as well." "How many?" Marcus asked from his position at Damon's right hand. "Conservative estimate? 50 combatants by the end of the week. Maybe more." Elena swiped to the next screen. "But that's not our biggest problem." Damon's jaw tightened. "Explain." "The Council of Alphas is demanding a formal hearing. They want Sera turned over to neutral custody until her bloodline can be verified and her claims evaluated." Elena's voice dripped with disgust. "It's political theater. Half the council is in Ashford's pocket." The growl that rumbled from Damon's chest made every wolf in the room instinctively bare their throats. "Like hell." "There's more," Elena continued reluctantly. "The hearing is set for tomorrow night. If we don't comply, they'll declare us rogue and authorize any pack to hunt us." The silence that followed was deafening. Being declared rogue was a death sentence. It meant losing all territorial protections, all alliances, all legal standing in the supernatural community. It would make them fair game for every ambitious alpha looking to claim Blackthorne territory. "Let them try," Damon said quietly, but his words carried the weight of absolute certainty. "No one touches what's mine." "Alpha," came a hesitant voice from the back of the room. Thomas, one of his younger pack members, stepped forward nervously. "With respect, is one woman worth risking the entire pack?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Damon's eyes went wolf gold as he fixed his gaze on the younger man. "That woman is your future Luna. She carries the blood of legends in her veins. And she's under my protection." His voice was deadly soft. "If you have a problem with that, Thomas, you're free to leave." "Permanently." Thomas immediately dropped his gaze and bowed his head. "My apologies, Alpha. I spoke out of turn." But the damage was done. Damon could see the doubt in other faces around the room, hear the whispered conversations that stopped when he looked their way. Fear was a cancer that spread quickly through a pack, and his people were scared. He couldn't blame them. He was asking them to risk everything for a woman most of them had never met, based on a bond they couldn't understand. But what they didn't realize was that this wasn't just about Sera anymore. It was about the future of their pack, their strength, their legacy. "Elena, I want updates every hour." "Marcus, double the guard on the hospital and start moving our non-combatants to the safe houses." Damon's commands were crisp, efficient. "I'm going to see Sera. She needs to know what's coming." As he turned to leave, his phone buzzed with an incoming call. The number was familiar, Dr. Chen from the hospital. His blood went cold. "Blackthorne. Mr. Blackthorne, you need to get here now. Ms. Nightingale, she's gone." The phone cracked in Damon's grip. "What do you mean, gone?" "She discharged herself against medical advice 20 minutes ago. Security footage shows her leaving through the parking garage." Dr. Chen's voice was strained. "Sir, she could barely walk. Her injuries." Damon was already moving, Marcus and Elena flanking him as they headed for the door. "Did she say where she was going?" "She left this for you." The doctor's words followed him as he ran for his car, but Damon already knew what Sera had done. She'd run. Despite everything they'd shared, Despite the connection growing between them, she'd chosen to face the danger alone rather than let his pack suffer for her. It was noble. It was brave. It was completely unacceptable. The drive to the hospital took 8 minutes that felt like hours. Dr. Chen met him at the nurse's station with a sealed envelope bearing his name in Sera's distinctive handwriting. His hands shook slightly as he tore it open. Damon, by the time you read this, I'll be long gone. Don't try to find me. I'm better at hiding than you are at hunting, and we both know it. What happened between us was real, but it can't be enough. I won't be the reason your pack falls. You've built something incredible here, something that matters, and I won't destroy it because of my cursed bloodline. Victor Ashford wants me? Let him come. But he'll have to catch me first, and I've been running from better predators than him for 12 years. Thank you for showing me what it felt like to be protected, even if it was only for a moment. I'll carry that with me wherever I go.
Don't follow me.
That's not a request. It's the last thing I'll ever ask of you.
S.
P.S. Tell your pack that the legendary Roseheart strength isn't just physical. We're also legendarily stubborn. Damon crumpled the letter in his fist, his wolf howling in anguish and fury. She thought she was protecting him by leaving. She thought she was being noble. She was wrong. Marcus, he said without turning around. Get every available tracker on this now. I want to know which direction she went, what she's driving, where she might be headed. Alpha, maybe she's right. Maybe.
No.
Damon spun around, his eyes blazing with alpha fire. She's my mate, Marcus. My equal, my partner, the other half of my soul. And she just walked into a war zone thinking she can face it alone. Understanding dawned in Marcus's eyes. The mate bond wasn't just desire or attraction. It was a supernatural connection that made two individuals into one complete unit. Breaking that bond, whether by death or separation, would destroy them both. What are your orders? We find her, Damon said simply. And then we finish this war together, the way it was always meant to be. As they left the hospital, Damon's phone rang again. The caller ID made his blood turn to ice. Victor Ashford. He answered on the first ring. You have something that belongs to me. Ashford's laugh was oily, satisfied. Actually, Mr. Blackthorne, I think you'll find that I have something that belongs to the supernatural community at large. The Roseheart bloodline has been a thorn in the side of proper pack hierarchy for too long. Where is she? Safe.
For now.
But that could change very quickly. Ashford's voice turned businesslike. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to withdraw your protection and publicly disavow any connection to Serafina Roseheart. In return, I'll make her death quick and painless. The parking garage echoed with the sound of Damon's roar. Cars trembled, windows cracked, and every supernatural within a mile radius felt the weight of an alpha's fury. Touch her, Damon snarled into the phone, and I will hunt you to the ends of the earth. I will tear apart everything you've built, everyone you care about, until there's nothing left but ash and bone. Bold words from someone whose mate just walked straight into my trap. Ashford's smugness was palpable. You see, I've been watching Ms. Roseheart for weeks. I knew exactly which buttons to push to make her run. And when she did, my people were waiting. The world tilted. Sera's attack, her escape from the hospital, it had all been orchestrated. Ashford had played them both perfectly, using Damon's protective instincts and Sera's independence against them. You have until midnight to make your decision, Ashford continued. Publicly reject her, and she dies clean. Continue this foolish protection, and I'll make sure she suffers for every minute you waste. The line went dead. Damon stared at the silent phone, his mind racing through possibilities and strategies. Around him, his pack waited for orders, for leadership, for the decisive action that had made him legendary among alphas. But for the first time in his adult life, Damon Blackthorne felt the cold grip of true fear. Not for himself, not for his pack, but for the fierce, stubborn, impossible woman who had stormed into his life and changed everything. Sera was in the hands of his enemy, and she was there because she'd tried to protect him. The irony was brutal. In trying to save his pack, she'd walked straight into the trap that might destroy them both. Marcus placed a hand on his shoulder. What do we do, Alpha? Damon straightened, pushing the fear down beneath layers of cold determination. He was an alpha.
He was a Blackthorne.
And he would not lose his mate to a coward who hid behind politics and manipulation. We go to war, he said simply. All of us. Tonight. The hunt for Sera, and the final confrontation with Victor Ashford, was about to begin. Everything Damon thought he knew about loyalty, power, and love was about to be tested in the crucible of war. Chapter 7. The abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Seattle's industrial district reeked of rust, motor oil, and fear. Sera hung suspended by silver chains from a beam 20 feet above the concrete floor, the metal burning her wrists with every slight movement. The wounds from her earlier attack had reopened during the struggle, painting crimson streaks down her arms. But her captors had made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated exactly how much pain a Roseheart could endure. You know, for legendary torturers, you're remarkably unimaginative, she called down to the 3 mercenaries positioned around the warehouse floor. Her voice echoed in the cavernous space, steady despite the agony radiating through her body. Victor Ashford emerged from the shadows like a spider sensing vibrations in his web. He was smaller than she'd expected, average height, unremarkable features, the kind of man who'd be invisible in a crowd. But his eyes held the cold calculation of a predator who preferred psychological warfare to physical confrontation. Miss Roseheart. Or should I say Miss Nightingale? His smile was razor-thin. I have to admit, your false identity was quite clever. It took considerable resources to uncover the truth. Sera rotated slowly on the chains, taking inventory of the space. 5 exits, 17 potential weapons within reach if she could get free, and, most importantly, no sign that Damon had followed her trail.
Good.
He was smart enough to stay away. What do you want, Ashford? Besides the obvious megalomaniacal world domination fantasy. He laughed, the sound echoing off the metal walls. I want what every reasonable alpha wants: stability. Order. A world where bloodlines and power structures aren't threatened by romantic fairy tales about legendary wolves. Romantic fairy tales? Sera's laugh was bitter. You mean the part where my entire family was slaughtered for political convenience? Because that was pretty fucking realistic from where I'm hanging. Ashford's expression darkened. Your family was eliminated because they refused to accept the natural order. Your father believed that might made right, that the strongest should rule regardless of political alliance or diplomatic necessity. My father believed that strength should protect the weak, not exploit them. Sera's voice carried the weight of old grief and older fury. He believed that being an alpha meant something more than just having the biggest fangs. And where did that philosophy get him? Ashford gestured around the warehouse.
Dead.
Along with everyone who followed him. The casual cruelty in his voice made Sera's wolf snarl in her chest. She'd spent 12 years learning to control that rage, to channel it into survival instead of destruction. But hearing this bastard speak about her family like they deserved their fate tested every limit of her self-control. You didn't answer my question, she said, forcing her voice to remain level. What do you want? From you? Nothing but your death. Preferably after you publicly renounce any claim to pack leadership. Ashford checked his expensive watch. But from your new alpha boyfriend? That's a different conversation entirely. A chill that had nothing to do with the warehouse's temperature ran down Sera's spine. What do you mean? Mr. Blackthorne has until midnight to make a choice. Disavow you publicly, abandon his protection, and you die quickly. Continue this foolish crusade, and I'll make sure your death is educational. Sera's heart clenched. She'd left precisely to prevent this scenario, to keep Damon from having to choose between her and his pack. But Ashford had been 3 steps ahead of them both, turning her noble sacrifice into another weapon against the man she was beginning to love. He won't do it, she said with more confidence than she felt. Damon Blackthorne doesn't abandon his people. No, he doesn't. Which makes this situation so deliciously ironic. Ashford moved closer, his voice dropping to an intimate whisper. You see, by trying to protect him, you've put him in an impossible position. Choose his pack's safety and lose his mate. Choose his mate and watch his pack burn. The truth of it hit her like a physical blow. Every choice they'd made, every attempt to outmaneuver Ashford, had only tightened the noose around their necks. She'd played right into his hands. Of course, there is a third option, Ashford continued conversationally. You could save everyone a great deal of trouble and end this yourself. He nodded to one of his men, who approached with a silver knife. The blade gleamed in the harsh fluorescent lighting, its edge honed to surgical sharpness. One cut, Ashford said simply. Deep enough, and this all ends. Blackthorne keeps his pack, his territory, his precious reputation. And you, well, you get to be the noble martyr you've always dreamed of being. Sera stared at the knife, her mind racing through possibilities. She could do it. The silver would burn, but it would be over quickly. Damon would be safe, his pack would be protected, and Victor Ashford would have no more leverage. It would be the smart play. The logical choice. The coward's way out. Go fuck yourself, she said pleasantly. If you want me dead, you're going to have to do it yourself. And when Damon finds out, he'll already be dealing with the consequences of his choice. Ashford's smile turned predatory. You see, I've been busy while you've been hanging there making speeches. 3 packs have already declared their intention to claim Blackthorne territory if he's declared rogue. His borders are being tested as we speak.
No.
Sera closed her eyes, fighting against the despair threatening to overwhelm her. This was her fault. Her bloodline, her curse, her presence in Damon's life had brought war to his doorstep. The beautiful part, Ashford continued, is that he knows all of this. My people made sure he received detailed intelligence about every threat, every alliance forming against him. And yet he's still coming. Sera's eyes snapped open. What? Oh yes. Damon Blackthorne is currently mobilizing his entire pack for a rescue mission that will likely result in his death and the destruction of everything he's built. Ashford's laugh was genuinely delighted. Love makes fools of even the strongest alphas. The warehouse doors exploded inward with a sound like thunder. Sera's heart leaped as Damon's massive wolf form bounded through the opening, his black fur gleaming under the harsh lights. Behind him came Marcus and what looked like the entire Blackthorne pack in various stages of shift. Speak of the devil, Ashford murmured, pulling a gun from his jacket. Right on schedule. Damon, no. Sera screamed. It's a trap. But he was already moving, a blur of lethal grace and supernatural speed. Ashford's first shot went wide as Damon shifted mid-leap, his human form tackling the smaller man to the ground. The gun skittered across the concrete floor. Around them, chaos erupted. Ashford's mercenaries opened fire with silver bullets as the Blackthorne wolves spread out, using the warehouse's machinery for cover. The air filled with gunpowder, snarls, and the distinctive scent of spilled blood. The chains, Marcus called out, pointing towards Sera's suspended form. Elena, get her down. Elena Vasquez appeared at the base of Sera's hanging point, her face grim with determination. This is going to hurt, she called up, producing a pair of bolt cutters. Just do it. Sera braced herself as Elena cut through the first chain. The sudden shift in weight sent agony shooting through her shoulders, but she bit back the scream. Below them, Damon had pinned Ashford to the ground, his hands wrapped around the other alpha's throat. His eyes blazed with wolf fire, his face a mask of barely contained fury. You made one mistake, Damon snarled, his voice carrying over the chaos of battle. You touched what's mine. But Ashford smiled even with death inches away. Look around you, Blackthorne. Half your pack is bleeding, the other half is pinned down. Even if you kill me, my allies will finish what I started. Maybe, Damon admitted, but you won't be alive to see it. Damon, stop. Sera's voice cut through his rage like a blade. The second chain snapped, and she dropped into Elena's waiting arms. He's not worth it. Damon's head turned toward her voice, and the moment of distraction was all Ashford needed. A hidden knife appeared in his hand, its silver blade aimed at Damon's heart. Time seemed to slow. Sera saw the weapon, saw Damon's realization, saw the inevitable trajectory that would end with her mate's death. And in that crystalline moment, she made her choice. Her wolf exploded from her skin in a burst of golden light. 12 years of hiding, of suppressing her true nature, of denying her birthright fell away like discarded chains. She was Serafina Roseheart, daughter of legends, heir to power that had shaped the supernatural world for generations. She was magnificent. The golden wolf that landed between Damon and Ashford's blade was larger than any female should be, her fur gleaming like spun sunlight. Her eyes burned with the accumulated fury of her slaughtered family, and when she snarled, the sound carried the weight of absolute authority. Ashford's knife clattered to the floor. Around the warehouse, fighting stopped as every supernatural present felt the crushing weight of Roseheart power filling the air. "Impossible," Ashford whispered. "You're supposed to be broken."
Weak.
The last pathetic remnant of a dead bloodline. Sera shifted back to human form, her nakedness somehow regal rather than vulnerable. Blood still streaked her skin, her wounds still ached, but she stood tall and proud in the center of the warehouse. "I am Serafina Roseheart," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the space. "Daughter of Marcus Roseheart, Alpha of the Pacific Coalition. Heir to the bloodline that shaped this continent's supernatural community for 3 centuries." Her eyes fixed on Ashford with laser intensity. "And you are trespassing in my territory." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Damon stood, his own power rising to meet hers. Not in challenge, but in recognition. In partnership. When he spoke, his voice carried the same absolute authority. "Anyone who has a problem with my mate's claim can take it up with both of us." The battle was far from over. But as Sera and Damon stood side by side, their combined power filling the warehouse like a physical force, one thing became crystal clear. They were stronger together than either had ever been alone. The true war was just beginning, but now they would face it as equals. Chapter 8. The safe house nestled in the Cascade Mountains was a fortress disguised as a luxury cabin, its rustic exterior hiding reinforced walls, advanced security systems, and enough firepower to hold off a small army. Sera sat on the edge of the massive stone fireplace, watching flames dance while Damon paced the length of the great room like a caged predator. "Sit down," she said without looking at him. "You're making me dizzy." "3 of my people are in the hospital," Damon growled, his voice thick with guilt and fury. "Marcus has 17 stitches, Elena nearly bled out from silver poisoning, and Thomas—" He stopped, running both hands through his dark hair. "Thomas might lose his arm." Sera finally turned to face him, her hazel eyes soft with understanding. "And you think it's your fault?" "I know it's my fault." Damon's laugh was bitter. "I led them into a trap because I was too focused on getting to you to think strategically. Some alpha I am." The accusation in his voice, directed entirely at himself, made her chest ache. She stood slowly, still feeling the effects of her injuries and the massive power expenditure from her transformation. The golden wolf that had emerged in the warehouse had been dormant for 12 years, and unleashing that much Roseheart energy had left her drained. "Damon." Her voice was quiet but carried enough authority to make him stop pacing. "Look at me." He turned, and she saw the weight of leadership in his steel-gray eyes, the burden of every decision that affected the lives of people who trusted him completely. It was a weight she understood intimately. "You saved my life tonight," she said simply. "Your people followed you into battle because they believe in you, because they've seen you lead with wisdom and strength for 10 years. One tactical mistake doesn't erase a decade of success. One mistake that cost. One mistake that any alpha would have made in your position." Sera moved closer, closing the distance between them with deliberate steps. "You think my father never led people into danger? You think he never made choices that got good wolves hurt?" Damon's expression shifted, surprise replacing some of the self-recrimination. "Your father?" Marcus Roseheart was legendary for his strategic brilliance, but he was also legendary for his protective instincts. There were times when his need to shield the people he loved overrode his tactical judgment. Sera reached up, placing her palm against Damon's cheek. "The mark of a true alpha isn't never making mistakes, it's learning from them and becoming stronger." He leaned into her touch, his eyes closing briefly. When he opened them again, some of the tension had left his shoulders. How do you do that? Do what? Make me feel human again when the wolf wants to tear the world apart. The admission was raw, vulnerable in a way that made her heart clench. She could see the battle raging inside him, the alpha who demanded perfection from himself warring with the man who was learning to accept comfort from someone he considered an equal. Because I understand what it's like to carry that weight, she said softly. And because you don't have to carry it alone anymore. Something shifted in Damon's expression, walls coming down, defenses cracking. He reached up to cover her hand with his, pressing her palm more firmly against his face. I've been an alpha for 10 years, he said quietly. I've never had anyone who could share the burden. Never had a partner who understood the responsibility. You have one now. The words were a promise, a commitment that went deeper than simple attraction or even the supernatural pull of the mate bond. If you want one. Instead of answering with words, Damon leaned down and kissed her. This time it wasn't the gentle brush of lips from the hospital. It was hungry, desperate, full of all the fear and relief and growing love that neither of them had been able to express. Sera melted into him, her arms winding around his neck as she kissed him back with equal fervor. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Damon rested his forehead against hers, his hands spanning her waist. I've never felt anything like what I feel for you, he admitted, his voice rough with emotion. It terrifies me. Sera smiled, her thumb tracing the sharp line of his jaw.
Good.
If it didn't scare you a little, it wouldn't be worth having. A soft chime from Damon's phone broke the intimate moment. He glanced at the screen and his expression hardened. Elena. Emergency code. He answered on the first ring. What's wrong? Elena's voice came through the speaker, tense with urgency. Alpha, we've got problems. The Council of Alphas has moved up their timeline. They're demanding Sera's appearance tomorrow night, not next week. And there's more. 3 packs have formally declared their intention to challenge your territory if you don't comply. Sera felt Damon's muscles tense under her hands. Which packs? Morrison, Blackwater, and Stone Ridge. Combined, they're looking at nearly 200 warriors. Elena's pause was pregnant with meaning. Alpha, they're not just coming for territory. They want to make an example. The blood drained from Sera's face. Morrison Pack was the one that had been testing Blackthorne borders for months. Blackwater Pack was known for their brutality in territorial disputes. And Stone Ridge was Victor Ashford's pack. He's using the council as cover, she breathed, understanding flooding through her. This was never about the law or proper procedure. He's orchestrating a legal way to destroy your pack and eliminate me at the same time. Damon's eyes flashed gold. How long do we have? 18 hours, Elena replied. The council convenes at sunset tomorrow. If you don't appear with Sera, you'll be declared rogue and the territorial challenges will be authorized. And if we do appear? Then Sera faces a tribunal designed to find her guilty of crimes against pack hierarchy, the punishment for which is death. The phone went silent as the implications sank in. Either way, Ashford won. Either they hid and lost everything in the resulting war, or they walked into a rigged trial that would end with Sera's execution. There's one more thing, Elena said reluctantly. We've been monitoring communications. Ashford has convinced the council that Sera's bloodline represents a threat to supernatural stability. He's arguing that the Roseheart line was eliminated for good reason, and allowing her to claim leadership would encourage other, extinct, bloodlines to challenge the current order. Sera closed her eyes, the weight of generations pressing down on her shoulders. Her family's legacy had become a weapon to use against the man she loved. I have to go, she said quietly. I have to face the council.
No.
Damon's voice was absolute. I won't let you walk into a death trap. It's not your choice to make. Sera stepped back, putting physical distance between them even as it pained her to do so. This is exactly what my bloodline exists for, to face impossible odds and protect the pack structures that keep our world stable. By dying for them, by fighting for them, by standing up and proving that strength and leadership aren't about fear and dominance, They're about service and sacrifice. Sera's voice grew stronger as she spoke, the certainty of her path becoming clear. My father believed that. My grandfather believed that. And if I have to die to prove it, then at least I'll die knowing I stood for something. Damon moved toward her, his expression fierce. We'll die knowing we stood for something. Together. Damon, no. Your pack needs you alive. They need their alpha to honor his commitments. And I committed to protecting you. His smile was sharp as a blade. Besides, you don't seriously think I'm going to let you have all the fun, do you? Despite everything, Sera found herself smiling back. You're completely insane. Probably. But I'm your kind of insane. Elena's voice crackled through the phone. Alpha, what are your orders? Damon's gaze never left Sera's face as he answered. Contact our allies. Every pack that owes us favors. Every alpha who's ever benefited from Blackthorne protection. It's time to call in debts. Sir, most of our allies won't risk open conflict with the Council. Then we don't ask them to fight. We ask them to witness. Damon's smile turned predatory. If Ashford wants to put on a show trial, let's make sure the entire supernatural community gets to see exactly what kind of justice the Council dispenses. Understanding dawned in Sera's eyes. You want to turn their tribunal into a public relations nightmare. I want to expose Victor Ashford for what he really is, a coward who hides behind politics because he's not strong enough to face a real challenge. Damon's voice carried the weight of absolute conviction. And I want every alpha in North America to see what happens when someone tries to destroy a Blackthorne. As Elena signed off to begin implementing their desperate plan, Sera studied the man who had chosen to risk everything for her. The firelight played across his features, highlighting the strength in his jaw and the determination in his eyes. You know this is probably suicide, she said softly. Probably. Damon pulled her back into his arms, his touch gentle despite the steel in his voice. But if we're going down fighting. And we're going down together. Sera leaned into his strength, drawing comfort from his unwavering resolve. Tomorrow night would test everything they believed about leadership, love, and the price of standing up for what was right. But tonight, they had each other. And for the first time in her life, Sera understood what it meant to have a true partner, someone who would stand beside her in the face of impossible odds, not because he had to, but because he chose to. I love you, she whispered against his chest. His arms tightened around her. I love you too. And tomorrow night, we're going to show the world what that means. The final battle for their future and their lives was less than 18 hours away. Chapter 9. The council chamber was an amphitheater of old power and older prejudices. Ancient stone walls bore the carved symbols of dozens of pack bloodlines, some dating back to the first European settlements. Sera stood in the center of the circular floor, feeling the weight of centuries pressing down on her as 12 alphas, the most powerful in North America, sat in judgment above her. Victor Ashford occupied the speaker's podium, his voice carrying the practiced cadence of a politician as he outlined his case. Honored council members, we gather tonight to address a threat that strikes at the very foundation of our ordered society. The Roseheart bloodline was eliminated 12 years ago for good reason. Their reckless ideology threatened the stability that has kept our people safe for generations. Sera forced herself to remain motionless, though every instinct screamed at her to shift and tear Ashford's throat out. Beside her, Damon stood like a granite statue, his presence radiating barely contained power. The fact that he was allowed to remain at her side was a small victory. Traditionally, the accused faced the council alone. The woman before you, Ashford continued, represents not just the return of a dangerous bloodline, but the very real possibility of supernatural civil war. Already, her presence has destabilized territorial agreements and encouraged challenges to established pack hierarchies. From her position in the gallery, Elena caught Sera's eye and nodded slightly. The plan was in motion. Every word of this proceeding was being broadcast live to alpha contacts across 3 countries. Whatever happened here tonight, the supernatural community would see it all. You speak of stability, rumbled a voice from the council dais. Alpha Catherine Steele of the Northern Territories, her silver hair gleaming under the chamber's harsh lights. Yet it seems to me that the only instability comes from your attempts to eliminate this woman. Perhaps you could explain why the Roseheart bloodline poses such a threat to your particular interpretation of pack hierarchy. Ashford's smooth facade cracked slightly. The Rosehearts believed that leadership should be earned through service rather than inherited through bloodline. They promoted the dangerous notion that any wolf could challenge established authority if they deemed it unjust. And this is dangerous because... Another council member leaned forward, Alpha James Riversong, whose own pack had risen to prominence through merit rather than inheritance. Because it encourages chaos. Ashford's voice rose, his careful political mask slipping. If every Omega with delusions of grandeur believes they can challenge their betters, how long before our entire social structure collapses? A murmur ran through the gallery. Even among the traditional alphas, Ashford's words carried the stench of fear rather than reasoned argument. Sera stepped forward, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. May I respond to these accusations, honored council? Alpha Steele's eyes glittered with what might have been amusement. You may speak, Serafina Roseheart. My family never promoted chaos or disorder. We promoted accountability. Sera's voice grew stronger as she spoke, the weight of her bloodline's legacy giving her words power. We believed that an alpha's authority came from their service to their pack, not from their ability to dominate through fear. We believed that strength should protect the vulnerable, not exploit them. Pretty words, Ashford sneered. But your father's accountability led to territorial wars that claimed hundreds of lives. My father's accountability exposed alphas who were abusing their power, stealing from their packs, and selling territory to human developers. Sera's eyes blazed with fury. The war started when those corrupt leaders chose to fight rather than face justice. Enough. Ashford slammed his hand against the podium. This woman's very existence is a threat to everything we've built. Her bloodline has been extinct for 12 years. Let it remain so. The chamber erupted in voices as council members turned to each other in heated discussion. Through the chaos, Sera caught sight of movement in the gallery. Marcus was there, his arm in a sling, but his eyes alert. Elena had positioned herself near the main exits. And scattered throughout the viewing area were faces she recognized, alphas who owed favors to the Blackthorne pack, witnesses to whatever was about to unfold. Alpha Steele called for order with a voice that cut through the noise like a blade. The council will deliberate. The accused will remain. Actually, interrupted a new voice from the chamber's main entrance, I believe there's been a procedural error. All heads turned as a figure stepped into the light. Sera's breath caught in her throat. The man approaching the council floor was ancient even by supernatural standards, his white hair flowing past his shoulders and his pale eyes holding the weight of centuries. This was Aldrich Moonwhisper, the eldest alpha in North America and the only living member of the original council that had established their laws. Elder Moonwhisper, Alpha Steele said carefully. This is unexpected. Is it? Aldrich's smile was sharp as winter wind. When the last heir of a founding bloodline faces judgment, tradition demands that a member of the original council be present to ensure proper procedure is followed. Ashford's face had gone pale. The Roseheart bloodline lost its founding status. When they were murdered in their sleep by hired assassins, Aldrich said mildly. An investigation that was never completed, I might add, due to the convenient destruction of all evidence. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop 10 degrees. Sera felt Damon's hand brush against hers, a subtle show of support that sent strength coursing through her veins. Furthermore, Aldrich continued, I must note that this tribunal lacks proper jurisdiction. Miss Roseheart has not been charged with any specific crime, nor has she attempted to claim territory or challenge any established pack. The Council's authority extends to interpack disputes and treaty violations, not to the elimination of bloodlines based on ideological differences. She's a threat, Ashford began. She's a woman standing peacefully in this chamber, accused of nothing more than being born to the wrong family. Aldrich's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. If this council wishes to execute citizens for their bloodline, perhaps we should examine the precedent that sets for all our children. The silence that followed was deafening. Around the chamber, alphas who had been content to let Ashford orchestrate his show trial were suddenly faced with the implications of their participation. Alpha Steel cleared her throat. Elder Moonwhisper raises valid concerns about jurisdiction. Perhaps this matter should be.
No.
Ashford's voice cracked like a whip. I invoke the right of challenge. The words hit the chamber like a physical blow. Sera felt Damon's entire body go rigid beside her, his wolf rising to the surface in response to the threat. The right of challenge was an ancient law, predating the council itself. Any alpha could invoke it to settle disputes through single combat, with the understanding that the winner's position became law. It was rarely used in modern times, but when invoked, it superseded all other legal proceedings. You challenge Miss Roseheart's right to exist? Aldrich asked quietly. I challenge her right to claim the Roseheart legacy. I challenge her right to destabilize our social order. And I challenge her right to corrupt the mind of a respected alpha with her dangerous ideologies. Ashford's eyes were wild now, his careful political facade completely abandoned. Single combat to the death. Winner takes all. Sera stepped forward before anyone could stop her. I accept. Sera, no. Damon's voice was sharp with alarm. You're still injured. You haven't fully recovered from. I accept, she repeated, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. But I claim the right to choose my champion. Ashford's smile was triumphant. Choose whoever you wish. The result will be the same. Sera turned to face Damon, her hazel eyes soft with love and absolute trust. I choose Damon Blackthorne as my champion. Not because I'm weak, but because we're stronger together. The chamber erupted in chaos as the implications hit home. If Damon fought as her champion and won, not only would Sera's bloodline be restored, but the ideology Ashford feared most, partnership instead of dominance, would be vindicated in the most public way possible. But if he lost, the challenge is accepted, Alpha Steel announced, her voice cutting through the noise. Combat will commence immediately, with the full council as witness. As the chamber reconfigured itself for the coming battle, Sera caught Damon's hands in hers. You don't have to do this, she whispered. We could run, disappear, and spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders. Damon's smile was fierce and loving.
No.
We end this here, tonight. Together. He kissed her then, soft and swift, a promise and a prayer wrapped in the touch of lips. When he pulled away, his eyes were blazing with wolf fire. When I win, he said quietly, we're going to build something new. A pack structure based on respect instead of fear. A legacy worthy of your family's name. When you win, Sera corrected, her voice steady despite the terror clawing at her chest. Because failure wasn't an option. Not when they'd come so far, learned so much about what it meant to be true partners. Not when the future of every wolf who dreamed of something better hung in the balance. The battle circle was drawn. Victor Ashford stood on one side, his form already beginning to shift as anticipation of violence triggered his wolf. On the other side, Damon rolled his shoulders and began removing his jacket, his movements calm and controlled despite the magnitude of what was at stake. This was it. The moment that would determine whether love and partnership could triumph over fear and domination. The moment that would prove whether two people who completed each other could change the world. The final battle was about to begin.
Chapter 10.
The ancient stone circle in the center of the council chamber had witnessed countless challenges over the centuries, but none quite like this. Sacred runes carved into the floor glowed with supernatural energy as the assembled alphas created a barrier of power around the combat arena. What happened within that circle would be binding law, recognized by every pack in North America. Damon stood at the edge of the circle, his shirt discarded, the muscled expanse of his chest rising and falling with controlled breathing. Across from him, Victor Ashford paced like a caged animal, his human form already showing signs of the partial shift that marked an experienced fighter. Last chance to reconsider, Blackthorne, Ashford called out, his voice carrying a confidence that made Sera's stomach clench. Yield now, and I'll make her death quick. Damon's response was a low growl that seemed to emanate from the very stones beneath their feet. The only death in this circle will be yours. Elder Moonwhisper raised his ancient staff, its silver head catching the light. By the old laws and the ancient ways, let this challenge commence. The gods will judge the righteous. The moment the staff touched the ground, both alphas exploded into motion. Ashford shifted mid-leap, his human form dissolving into a massive gray wolf with silver-tipped fur and eyes like chips of ice. He was built for speed and agility, his smaller frame allowing for lightning-fast attacks and quick retreats. Damon's transformation was different, controlled, purposeful, terrifying in its deliberate power. His black wolf was enormous, easily 50 pounds heavier than his opponent, with muscles that spoke of raw strength and endurance. Where Ashford was quicksilver, Damon was an avalanche. They collided in the center of the circle, with a sound like thunder. Ashford's speed carried him past Damon's initial lunge, his claws raking deep furrows across the larger wolf's flank. Blood splattered across the ancient stones as Damon spun to face his opponent, his own counterattack missing by inches. "He's faster than expected," Marcus muttered from his position in the gallery, his uninjured hand clenched into a fist. Elena nodded grimly. "But Damon's stronger. If he can land a solid hit." In the circle, the two wolves circled each other with predatory grace. Ashford's strategy was becoming clear: hit and run, wear down the larger opponent with 1,000 small wounds rather than risk a direct confrontation. It was working. 3 more lightning-fast attacks left fresh cuts across Damon's shoulders and legs. Each wound was shallow but painful, designed to slow his reflexes and sap his strength. Ashford danced away from every counterattack, his smaller size allowing him to slip through gaps that would have trapped a larger wolf. Sera watched in growing horror as her mate bled onto the sacred stones. Every instinct screamed at her to shift, to leap into the circle and fight beside him. But the ancient laws were absolute. Interference would mean immediate death for both of them. "Come on," she whispered, her hands clenched so tightly her nails drew blood from her palms. "You're thinking like an alpha. Think like a partner." As if he'd heard her, Damon suddenly changed tactics. Instead of chasing Ashford around the circle, he moved to the center and stood his ground, his massive head lowered and his eyes tracking his opponent's movement. Ashford circled closer, emboldened by the apparent surrender. "Giving up already, Blackthorne? I expected more from the legendary." His taunt cut off in a yelp of pain as Damon's jaws clamped down on his rear leg. The larger wolf had feinted weakness, drawing his opponent into range for a devastating trap. Now it was Damon's turn to dictate the pace. His superior strength came into play as he used his grip to slam Ashford against the ground, then again against the barrier wall. The gray wolf's struggles grew weaker with each impact, but Ashford was far from finished. With a move born of desperation, he twisted in Damon's grip and sank his fangs deep into the larger wolf's throat. Not a killing bite, the angle was wrong, but close enough to make Damon release him and stagger backward. Blood poured from the wound in Damon's throat, and Sera felt her world tilt. If Ashford had hit the major artery. He missed. Elena breathed, her enhanced senses picking up details invisible to human eyes. It's not fatal, but it was bad enough. Damon's movements were becoming sluggish, his breathing labored. Ashford, sensing victory, pressed his advantage with a flurry of attacks that drove the larger wolf backward. "Your champion is failing," Ashford snarled, his human voice carrying even in wolf form, a display of power that sent murmurs through the watching alphas. "Just like your pathetic bloodline failed." The words hit Sera like physical blows. This was her fault. Her presence in Damon's life had brought him to this moment, facing death for ideals that might be nothing more than noble fantasies. But then she saw something that made her heart leap. Despite his wounds, despite the blood loss, Damon's eyes were still sharp with intelligence. He was hurt, but not beaten. And in his gaze, she saw the same calculation that had made him legendary among alphas. He was studying his opponent, learning his patterns, waiting for the perfect moment. It came when Ashford overextended himself, going for what he thought would be the killing blow. His leap carried him high into the air, jaws aimed at Damon's exposed throat. Damon met him in midair. The collision was devastating. Both wolves crashed to the ground in a tangle of fur and fury, rolling across the blood-slicked stones. For a moment, neither moved. Then Damon rose slowly to his feet, Ashford's throat in his jaws. The gray wolf struggled weakly, his eyes wide with the terror of impending death. Around the circle, the assembled alphas leaned forward, waiting for the inevitable snap of jaws that would end Victor Ashford's life. But Damon didn't deliver the killing bite. Instead, he shifted back to human form, keeping his hands locked around Ashford's throat as the other wolf was forced to follow suit. "Yield," Damon commanded, his voice rough from his own throat wound but carrying absolute authority. "Never," Ashford gasped, though his struggles were growing weaker. "Then die," Damon said simply, his grip tightening. "Wait." The cry came from the gallery, from Alpha Patricia Steinfeld of the Eastern Seaboard. "If you kill him, you prove his point about the Roseheart bloodline. You become the very thing he claims to fear." Sera felt her heart stop. Steinfeld was right. If Damon executed Ashford in cold blood, it would taint everything they'd fought for. The watching alphas would see violence and domination, not justice and protection. But the ancient laws were clear. A challenge to the death meant exactly that. "He's right to fear us," Damon said, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. "But not for the reasons he thinks." He looked directly at Sera, his gray eyes blazing with love and determination. "The Roseheart bloodline isn't dangerous because they promote chaos. They're dangerous because they promote something Victor Ashford has never understood, the idea that true strength comes from knowing when not to use it." With deliberate slowness, Damon released his grip on Ashford's throat. The smaller man collapsed to the stones, gasping and alive. "I could kill you," Damon continued, his voice echoing off the ancient walls. "The law gives me that right. But I choose mercy over vengeance. I choose to be the leader my pack deserves, not the monster you claim to fight." The silence in the chamber was absolute. Then Elder Moonwhisper's voice rang out, rich with approval and something that might have been pride. "The challenge is complete. Damon Blackthorne stands victorious." The ancient alpha's eyes moved to Sera, and she saw centuries of wisdom in their depths. The Roseheart bloodline is restored to its rightful place among the founding families. And their philosophy of strength through service is vindicated by the very mercy shown here tonight. As the barrier around the circle dissolved, Sera ran to Damon's side. He caught her in his arms, spinning her around despite his wounds, his face blazing with triumph and relief. "We did it," he whispered against her hair. "We actually did it." "You did it," she corrected, pulling back to look at his face. "You proved that love is stronger than fear, that partnership is more powerful than domination." Around them, the council chamber erupted in voices as alphas debated the implications of what they'd witnessed. Some were angry, others thoughtful, but all of them had seen something unprecedented, an alpha who had chosen mercy when he could have chosen vengeance. "What happens now?" Sera asked, suddenly aware that their victory, while complete, was only the beginning. Damon's smile was brilliant, transforming his blood-streaked face into something beautiful. "Now we go home, and we build the future your family dreamed of, together." As they walked from the chamber, Sera felt the weight of generations lifting from her shoulders. The Roseheart legacy would continue, but it would be something new, a partnership between equals that honored the past while embracing the future. Behind them, Victor Ashford struggled to his feet, his dreams of dominance shattered by an act of mercy he would never understand. But that was his burden to bear, not theirs. They had won. Not through violence or intimidation, but through the simple radical act of choosing love over fear. The real victory was just beginning. Chapter 11. 3 weeks after the council tribunal, the Blackthorne compound had been transformed into something resembling a fortress preparing for celebration rather than war. Strings of lights wound through the ancient oak trees, and the scent of roasting meat and fresh bread filled the evening air. Tonight wasn't just about victory. It was about claiming a bond that had been tested by fire and proven unbreakable. Sera stood before the full-length mirror in Damon's bedroom, adjusting the flowing white dress that had belonged to his grandmother. The fabric was vintage silk, simple but elegant, with intricate beadwork that caught the light with every movement. It wasn't a traditional wedding dress. Supernatural bonding ceremonies were older and more primal than human marriage, but it felt right. "You look beautiful," Elena said from her position by the door, her own formal attire a deep forest green that complemented her dark coloring. "Though I have to say, 3 weeks ago I never would have predicted I'd be helping the legendary Roseheart heir get ready for bonding ceremony." Sera laughed, some of her nervous energy dissipating. 3 weeks ago, I was a barista with a fake name who thought her biggest problem was an obnoxious customer trying to buy her cafe. And now you're about to become Luna of the most powerful pack in the Pacific Northwest, not to mention restoring a bloodline that was thought extinct. Elena's expression grew serious. "Are you ready for what that means?" The question wasn't casual curiosity. As Luna, Sera would share equal authority with Damon over pack decisions, territorial disputes, and the welfare of nearly 200 wolves. It was a responsibility that would affect thousands of lives and shape the future of supernatural politics. "I'm terrified," Sera admitted, her hands smoothing over the silk skirt. "But I'm also excited. For the first time in my life, I don't have to hide what I am or pretend to be less than my bloodline demands. I can finally be the leader my father trained me to become." A soft knock interrupted their conversation. "Come in," Sera called. Damon stepped through the doorway, and Sera's breath caught in her throat. He wore traditional alpha formal wear, black leather pants that showcased his powerful build, a white shirt open at the collar, and a midnight blue jacket embroidered with the Blackthorne pack symbol. But it was the expression in his steel-gray eyes that made her heart race. "You're not supposed to see her before the ceremony," Elena protested, though she was smiling. "Since when do we follow traditional rules?" Damon's gaze never left Sera's face. "Besides, I wanted to give her something." He approached slowly, pulling a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. When he opened it, Sera gasped. Nestled inside was a ring unlike anything she'd ever seen, a band of silver and gold twisted together, set with a stone that seemed to hold captured moonlight. "It was my great-grandmother's," Damon said softly, taking the ring from the box. "The stone is moonstone from the Cascade Mountains, and the metal came from the first silver mine the Blackthorne pack ever owned. It's been passed down to each Luna for 4 generations." Sera extended her hand, watching as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. The moment the metal touched her skin, she felt a warmth spread up her arm, recognition, acceptance, belonging. "The pack is waiting," Elena said gently, though her voice was thick with emotion. "Marcus is practically pacing holes in the great room floor." Damon chuckled. "My beta is more nervous about this ceremony than either of us. He's convinced something will go wrong at the last minute." "What could go wrong?" Sera asked, then immediately regretted the question. "Don't answer that." "Nothing's going wrong," Damon said firmly, taking her hands in his. "We've fought for this, bled for this, proven ourselves to the supernatural community and to our own people. Tonight, we claim what was always meant to be ours." The bonding ceremony took place in the compound's great hall, but the massive space had been opened to the night air through floor-to-ceiling doors that led to the outdoor amphitheater. Nearly 500 guests filled both spaces, pack members, allied alphas, supernatural dignitaries, and even some human officials who worked with the supernatural community. Elder Moonwhisper stood at the center of the raised dais, his ancient presence lending gravity to the proceedings. Beside him waited Marcus, proudly wearing his beta insignia, and Elena, representing the pack's acceptance of their future Luna. As Sera walked down the aisle formed by the assembled guests, she felt the weight of history in every step. This wasn't just her bonding to Damon, it was the formal restoration of the Roseheart bloodline, the creation of a new leadership dynamic, and the beginning of changes that would ripple through the supernatural world for generations. But when she reached the dais and saw Damon waiting for her, all the political implications faded away. This was about love. Pure, powerful, transformative love that had already changed both their lives. Dearly beloved, Elder Moonwhisper began, his voice carrying easily through the space. We gather tonight to witness a bonding that is both ancient and revolutionary. Ancient because it follows the oldest laws of our kind, the recognition of true mates, the joining of souls, the creation of a partnership that transcends individual identity. Revolutionary because it represents a new way of thinking about leadership, about strength, about what it means to be alpha. Sera felt Damon's hand squeeze hers as the elder continued. Damon Blackthorne, alpha of the most powerful pack in the Pacific Northwest, do you take Serafina Roseheart as your equal partner, your mate, your Luna? Do you promise to lead beside her, not above her, to honor her strength as she honors yours, and to build together a legacy worthy of both your bloodlines? I do. Damon's voice rang clear and strong through the hall. She is my mate, my equal, my heart made manifest. I claim her as she claims me, in the sight of our people and under the eyes of the ancient powers. Serafina Roseheart, last daughter of a legendary bloodline, do you take Damon Blackthorne as your equal partner, your mate, your alpha? Do you promise to lead beside him, to share the burden of command and the responsibility of protection, and to honor the trust placed in you by his people? Sera's voice was steady, carrying the weight of absolute certainty. I do. He is my mate, my partner, my strength made complete. I claim him as he claims me, and I accept the responsibility of leading his people, our people, with wisdom and compassion. Elder Moonwhisper raised a staff, its silver head catching the light of dozens of torches. Then by the old laws and the ancient ways, I pronounce you bonded in the sight of all. What is joined here cannot be sundered by man or beast, by politics or prejudice, by fear or hatred. You are one flesh, one soul, one destiny. The moment the staff touched the ground, power exploded through the amphitheater. Sera felt the mate bond snap into place like a physical thing, connecting her to Damon in ways that went deeper than thought or emotion. She could feel his heartbeat synchronizing with hers, his strength flowing into her as hers flowed into him. When he kissed her, the assembled crowd erupted in cheers that seemed to shake the very foundations of the compound. But Sera heard none of it. The world had narrowed to the man in her arms, the taste of his lips, the overwhelming sensation of being complete for the first time in her life. My Luna, he whispered against her mouth, the words a promise and a prayer. My Alpha, she replied, claiming him as thoroughly as he claimed her. The celebration that followed lasted until dawn. Pack members who had been skeptical of their union saw the way Sera moved among them, not as a stranger claiming authority, but as someone who genuinely cared about their welfare. Allied Alphas witnessed the easy partnership between the new Luna and her mate, the way they complemented each other's strengths without diminishing their individual power. But for Sera, the most meaningful moment came near midnight, when a group of young pack members approached her shyly. Luna, said Sera, barely 18 and new to her wolf form, my little sister isn't pack yet, but she heard about what you did at the council. She wanted me to ask, is it really true that any wolf can become a leader if they're strong enough and smart enough? Sera knelt to the girl's level, her heart swelling with hope for the future. It's really true. Leadership isn't about bloodline or gender or who your parents were. It's about service, about protecting those who can't protect themselves, and about being brave enough to stand up for what's right even when it's difficult. Could I be an alpha someday? Sera's voice was barely a whisper, as if she was afraid to voice such an impossible dream. If you work hard enough, learn enough, and care enough about your people? Sera smiled, remembering her own father's words from long ago. You could be anything you want to be. As the young wolves walked away, chattering excitedly about possibilities that had never existed before, Damon appeared at Sera's side. Changing the world already? His voice was warm with pride and love. One conversation at a time, she replied, leaning into his strength. Just like my father taught me. He would be proud of you, Damon said softly. Of what you've accomplished, of what you've built here. Sera looked around at the celebration continuing around them. Pack members dancing with allies who had once been enemies, children playing games that mixed human and wolf traditions, elderly pack members sharing stories with young ones hungry to learn their history. We built this, she corrected. Together. Together, he agreed, pulling her closer. the way it was always meant to be. As the first light of dawn painted the sky in shades of gold and pink, Sera felt the last of her old fears fall away. She was no longer the last surviving Roseheart, desperately hiding from a world that wanted her dead. She was Luna of the Blackthorne pack, equal partner to the man she loved, and the beginning of something entirely new. The future stretched ahead of them, full of challenges and possibilities they couldn't yet imagine. But whatever came, they would face it together, as mates, as partners, as equals who had chosen love over fear and built something beautiful from the ashes of the past. Their story was just beginning. Chapter 12. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the renovated pack headquarters, illuminating the conference table where representatives from 12 different packs sat in animated discussion. What had once been a sterile corporate boardroom now blended modern efficiency with supernatural tradition, ancient pack symbols carved into the mahogany walls, alongside state-of-the-art communication equipment that connected them to allies across 3 continents. Sera stood at the head of the table, her presence commanding respect from alphas who had once dismissed the very idea of female leadership. She wore a tailored business suit in deep emerald, the color complementing the Roseheart family pendant that now hung openly around her neck. No more hiding, no more pretending to be less than she was. The Portland territory dispute has been resolved, she announced, consulting the tablet in her hands. Alpha Morrison has agreed to honor the original boundary markers in exchange for shared hunting rights during the winter months. And the human development situation in Vancouver? Asked Alpha Catherine Steele, her silver hair gleaming in the morning light. Contained. Our legal team was able to prove that the proposed shopping center would violate 3 environmental protection statutes. Construction has been permanently halted. Sera's smile was sharp with satisfaction. Turns out fighting supernatural battles in human courts is remarkably effective. A murmur of approval ran around the table. The Blackthorne-Roseheart alliance, as it had come to be known, had revolutionized how supernatural disputes were handled. Instead of territorial wars that claimed lives and drew unwanted human attention, they used legal channels, economic pressure, and political maneuvering to achieve their goals. If there's no other business, Sera continued, I believe we can adjourn until next month's session. As the various alphas began to file out, chatting among themselves about implementation details and future collaborations, Marcus approached with a grin that made him look 10 years younger. Remember when our biggest concern was Morrison pack moving scent markers? He asked, shaking his head in amazement. Now we're mediating disputes between packs that used to be at each other's throats. Remember when you thought I was making the biggest mistake of my life by protecting some random human woman? Sera countered, her eyes sparkling with amusement. Marcus had the grace to look embarrassed. In my defense, I had no idea said random human woman was going to become the most influential Luna in North American supernatural politics. The sound of familiar footsteps made them both turn as Damon entered the conference room, his own business attire doing nothing to diminish the predatory grace that marked him as an alpha. But it was the expression on his face, pride, love, and something deeper, that made Sera's heart skip a beat even after a year of marriage. How did the Seattle Pack integration meeting go? She asked, moving naturally into his arms. Better than expected. Alpha Rodriguez is officially joining the alliance, and she's bringing her expertise in human supernatural business relations. Damon's smile was warm with satisfaction. We're up to 37 packs now, representing nearly 8,000 wolves. 37, Marcus repeated, still sounding slightly stunned. This time last year, we had maybe 6 solid allies. This time last year, we were operating under a completely different paradigm, Sera pointed out. Fear-based leadership can only take you so far. Eventually, people want something to believe in, not just something to be afraid of. Elena appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand and a slightly harried expression that meant important news. Sorry to interrupt, but we've got a situation that requires both alphas. Sera and Damon exchanged glances. Even after a year, it still sent a thrill through both of them to be addressed as equals, to have their partnership acknowledged in the most basic aspects of pack business. What kind of situation? Damon asked. The good kind. 3 more packs have formally requested alliance membership, including— Elena paused for dramatic effect— the Eastern Seaboard Coalition. The silence that followed was profound. The Eastern Seaboard Coalition represented 15 packs and nearly 3,000 wolves. If they join the alliance, it would make the Blackthorne-Roseheart partnership the single most powerful supernatural political entity in North America. They want to meet next week, Elena continued. Full formal presentation, complete with territorial agreements and resource-sharing protocols. Set it up, Sera said immediately. And make sure we have adequate security. Success like this makes us a target for anyone who profits from the old way of doing things. As Elena hurried off to make arrangements, Marcus cleared his throat. Speaking of the old way of doing things, we got word from the council. Victor Ashford has been formally stripped of his alpha status. His pack voted him out last month. Sera felt a complex mix of emotions at the news. Satisfaction that justice had been served, but also a strange sort of pity for a man who had been so consumed by fear and hatred that he destroyed everything he'd claimed to protect. Any word on where he went? Damon asked. Disappeared completely. Some say he's gone rogue. Others think he might have left supernatural society entirely. Marcus shrugged. Either way, he's no longer our problem. Everyone's our problem now, Sera said quietly. That's what leadership means. Being responsible for the welfare of people who may never even know your name. It was a philosophy that had guided every decision they'd made over the past year, every alliance they'd forged, every innovation they'd implemented. The idea that strength meant service, that power existed to protect rather than to dominate. Any regrets? Damon asked as they walked through the compound's corridors toward their private quarters. Sera considered the question seriously. A year ago, she'd been a barista with a fake identity, her greatest ambitions simply surviving another day without being discovered. Now she was Luna of the most powerful pack alliance in North America, her every decision affecting thousands of lives. Just one, she said finally. Damon stopped walking, concern flickering in his gray eyes. What? I regret that my parents didn't live to see this. To see their philosophy vindicated, their dreams made real. Sera's voice was soft with old grief, but also warm with new hope. But I think they would be proud of what we've built. I know they would, Damon said, pulling her into his arms. We've created something that honors their memory while building toward a future they could only dream of. They reached their private suite, a space that perfectly blended their two distinct styles. Damon's love of modern efficiency merged seamlessly with Sera's appreciation for historical significance. Family photos shared space with territorial maps, and ancient pack texts sat alongside cutting-edge legal documents. So, Damon said, settling onto the leather sofa and pulling Sera down beside him. What's on the agenda for tonight? More alliance business? Territory negotiations? World domination? Sera laughed, curling against his side with the easy intimacy of a year's worth of shared challenges and victories. Actually, I was thinking we could do something revolutionary. Oh, what's that? Nothing. She tilted her head to look at him, her hazel eyes sparkling with mischief. No meetings, no politics, no supernatural crises. Just us, a bottle of wine, and maybe that new mystery novel Elena recommended. Scandalous, Damon said solemnly. Two of the most powerful people in supernatural society taking an evening off. What will people think? They'll think we're smart enough to know that even alphas need to recharge. Sera's expression grew more serious. We've built something incredible, Damon. But if we burn ourselves out maintaining it, what's the point? No point at all, he agreed, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. Besides, I seem to remember promising you a lifetime of adventures. Hard to deliver on that if we never take time to enjoy them. As the sun set over the Cascade Mountains, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, Sera reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. A year ago, she'd walked into Damon's office expecting nothing more than a confrontation with an arrogant businessman. Instead, she'd found her mate, her equal, her partner in building a legacy that would outlast them both. The Blackthorne-Roseheart alliance was changing the supernatural world, one alliance at a time, one negotiation at a time, one young wolf at a time who now believed they could be anything they dreamed of being. But more than that, they'd proven that love wasn't weakness, that partnership wasn't compromise, that two strong people could become even stronger together without diminishing what made them individually powerful. "I love you," Sera said quietly, the words carrying the weight of everything they'd shared, everything they'd built, everything they still had to discover together. "I love you too," Damon replied, his voice warm with the certainty of a bond that had been tested by fire and proven unbreakable. "My Luna, my mate, my heart." Outside their windows, the compound bustled with the activities of a thriving community. Pack members training for security details, young wolves learning the history of their people, allied alphas sharing strategies and resources. The fruits of a revolution built not on violence or fear, but on the radical idea that strength meant caring for others more than yourself. And at the center of it all, two people who had found in each other not just love, but the courage to dream of a better world and the determination to make it real. Their story had begun with a challenge, a coffee shop confrontation between an arrogant alpha and a woman who refused to be intimidated. It had evolved through trials by fire, battles against enemies who feared change, and the discovery of a bond deeper than either had thought possible. Now it continued in the quiet moments between crises, in the satisfaction of problems solved and alliances forged, in the simple joy of two people who had found their perfect match and used that partnership to change the world. The alpha had claimed his mate. The mate had claimed her alpha. And together, they had claimed a future that belonged to all of them. In a world where strength had always meant dominance, they had dared to redefine it as love. And love, as it turned out, was the most powerful force of all. The end.